Yes, welcome to the Whitton Challenge 2025, a challenge to cycle around the Lake District up some of the steepest of hills, which I did in May. Had a few days in the Lake District beforehand to relax, enjoying the fine town of Keswick here with its market, enjoying drinks and reading my book and this lovely Thunder and Lightning ice cream. It was a very relaxed day the day before. Before that, I'd climbed up Helvellyn, up Striding Edge, and the day before Skiddaw, so my legs weren't that fresh and really needed this day off before tackling this route, where you start at that green dot in Grasmere and rotate in an anti-clockwise fashion around this route. So up some really steep hills. You can see the route card here with all its hills there. At Buttermere, we have our first feed station. The second arrow there is where you have a checkpoint you have to reach before you have to take a different route back. The second feed station's at that point before you reach the finish back at Grasmere. Here's the vertical profile, 3,500 metres of climbing in 185 kilometres or 112 miles. The highest point comes early on at Kirkstone Pass, and then a trio of difficult climbs including Honister Pass and Newlands Hawes, and finishing us off at 90 to 100 miles with the Hardknot and Rhinos passes. And this is Grasmere Showground. There's the starting line with all the cyclists getting ready to begin their ride. Some nerves around at this point in anticipation of the route ahead, but the weather was absolutely glorious. You can see the sun on the hills there. People chatting away, getting a coffee in the morning, and generally enjoying the atmosphere. Getting ready to start the ride, and you can see they've got a GPS tracker there for the entire ride with all the riders on there, so you could follow the cyclists around the course. Whole variety of cycling clubs are represented here. You can see a Lake District cyclist there who I'm sure is familiar with the hills, and some Islington ones there which I'm sure are less so.
We are off.
And we are off indeed. The roads are pretty busy, of course, with 2,000 to 2,500 cyclists on them, and some beautiful early morning views across Lake Windermere, and that was the general theme of the day, of lovely lakes and mountains views. And lots of smiling, happy cyclists at this time of the morning on fresh legs as we tackle the first climb of Kirkstone Pass. Kirkstone Pass. Reality is sticking in as to how hard this is going to be. First hill was long and tough, up to 461 metres, so we are at the highest point on the ride. Oh. Top of the mini Matadale. Getting warm. And what better way to fuel your journey up Borrowdale toward Honister Pass, and it fits in the back pocket of your jersey too. Honister Pass. Very steep bottom, and a slow slog from there. Plenty of carrots there. That hurt. Beautiful.
My steep might not be more steep another way around.
And as you can see, it turned into quite a warm day, and we had plenty of cars to contend with on the roads.
Free espresso if you like one, folks.
Yes, please.
Free espresso if you like.
Now about 100 kilometres into the ride, on the quieter side of the Lake District, the cyclists having been strung out a little bit more. It's a hiatus from some of the harder climbs, but it's often those smaller climbs that accumulate fatigue into the legs. This is Fang's Brow, and perhaps many cyclists were suffering from a lack of motivation by this point, but luckily the water station came up. this is where I made a small mistake. I should have fed more at this feed station and taken on more water, and that did bite me later on in the ride. There's the Tifosi, and now in anticipation of the final few climbs, including the hardest one at Hard Knot at 95 miles in. And that was all the climbing done. You shouldn't forget about the descents. This is the one down from Rhinos, because they were just as hard as the climbing was, with some really steep descents and some poor road surface. So you had to have good brakes, and I was glad the weather was fine and dry as it was. This is me at the end of the ride, having poured a bottle of water over my head, and the finish line was a lively place, welcoming all of those tired legs back from the ride to finish and enjoy having completed what was a really tough challenge. The complimentary pie and peas to complete what was really a very tough challenge. Some particularly hard hills. I think at Honister Pass was really steep at the bottom, and of course Hard Knot I couldn't get up, so I had to walk up sections of the really steep part there. And once all the climbing had been done at about 105 miles, my legs fell off, and I needed an ice cream and a drink to revive me. But I should be really proud, I think, of having completed the challenge. I definitely thrived rather than survived. And which of these bikes do you think I should take home? Anyway, here's the stats.